I'd just like a table for one, please. The manager's face twisted with open contempt. One, please? Here, look at yourself. You smell like a dumpster. This is a $200 a plate restaurant, not a homeless shelter. Get out before I call the cops. Sir, I just want to eat. I can pay. The laughter that followed was sharp and cruel. Pay with what, girl? I make more in a week than you'll see in your life. Now move your dirty feet off my floor before I move them for you. The dining room fell into a stunned silence. Dozens of people sat frozen in their seats. A black woman in a paint-stained hoodie stood at the entrance of one of Atlanta's most expensive restaurants. A white manager blocked her path, chin raised, arms crossed, smirking as if victory was already his. He had no idea who she was. He had no idea what was coming. But by the end of this story, you will watch this man lose everything. And it all started with a glass of soda. To understand what happened inside that restaurant, you need to know who this woman really was. And more importantly, you need to know why she was dressed like that. Her name was Wanda Richardson. On any given weekday, you might see her stepping out of a black Mercedes in a tailored blazer, walking into boardrooms where people stood when she entered. Because Wanda Richardson was the wife of Garrett Richardson, founder and CEO of Apex Dynamics, a defense and aerospace technology company valued at billions. But today was Saturday, and every Saturday for years, Wanda left the Mercedes behind. She left the blazer behind. She left every piece of jewelry behind. She woke up early inside their estate in Atlanta's Tuxedo Park neighborhood. She walked past the marble countertops and the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the private garden and reached into the back of her closet for the same outfit she wore every weekend: a faded Spelman College hoodie, paint-stained joggers, and sneakers so worn the soles were peeling. Garrett was already at the kitchen island, reading through contracts. He looked up as she passed. "You're going to eat lunch today, right?" "I'll try," she said, kissing him on the forehead. She grabbed her keys, not to the Mercedes or the Range Rover, but to a decade-old Honda Civic parked at the far end of the driveway, and drove herself across town to Hope Bridge Community Center, a nonprofit she had founded years earlier to serve families in need. Soon after arriving, Wanda was hauling boxes of donated winter coats through the back door. Next, she was on her knees sorting school supplies into bags. Later, she sat cross-legged on the floor with a group of children, helping them sound out words in a reading circle. One little girl, no older than 6, drew a picture in crayon. It showed a stick figure in a purple hoodie with big curly hair. Underneath, in wobbly letters, she had written, "Miss Wanda, my hero." Wanda folded the drawing and tucked it into her pocket. By midday, she was helping repaint the center's reading nook, sky blue on the walls, sunshine yellow on the trim. Paint found its way onto her hoodie, her joggers, even her chin. She laughed and kept going. Eventually, her stomach growled loud enough for the other volunteers to hear. A woman named Patrice nudged her. "Girl, you skipped lunch again. The Summit View Bistro is right up the road. Go eat something real." Wanda hesitated. She knew the place. It was a trendy spot in Buckhead with exposed brick, Edison bulb lighting, and craft cocktails. The kind of place where people wore blazers on a Saturday afternoon. She looked down at her paint-splattered hoodie, her dusty sneakers, her hands still flecked with sky blue. "I look a mess." "So what? Your money spends the same. Go eat." So Wanda grabbed her reusable grocery bag, still full of donated children's books she planned to drop off later, and drove to Buckhead. She parked the Civic on the street and walked through the front door of the Summit View Bistro. Within moments of stepping inside, her entire life was about to change. The restaurant was packed. Well-dressed couples sipped wine at candlelit tables. A group of men in golf polos laughed near the bar. The smell of seared steak and rosemary filled the air. A young hostess named Lila Brooks looked up from her stand and smiled, but she never got the chance to speak. The shift manager, Rylan Holt, got there first. Rylan Holt was in his late 20s, tall, with the kind of confidence that comes from never being told no. He had been shift manager for less than a year, and in that time, he had made it his mission to keep the restaurant on brand. That meant no wrinkled shirts, no flip-flops, and especially no one who might make his wealthy regulars feel uncomfortable. He spotted Wanda before she had taken 3 steps past the door: paint-stained hoodie, scuffed sneakers, reusable bag that looked second-hand, and she was black. Rylan did not hesitate. He stepped in front of the hostess podium, cutting Lila off mid-greeting, and planted himself directly in Wanda's path. His arms crossed, chin lifted, voice carrying across the entire dining room. "Excuse me, ma'am, this isn't a shelter. We have a dress code." Wanda stopped. She looked up at him, her voice steady and soft. The voice of someone who had learned long ago that calmness was its own kind of power. "I'd just like a table for one, please." Rylan let out a short, performative laugh. He turned to Lila with a theatrical eye roll, gesturing at Wanda like something stuck to his shoe. "Lila, did we start taking walk-ins from Goodwill?" A ripple of uncomfortable laughter came from a nearby table. 2 women in designer sunglasses glanced at each other. One covered her mouth. The other looked away and sipped her wine. Wanda did not flinch. Her hands stayed at her sides. Her grocery bag hung from her wrist. "I'd like to be seated, please. I'm happy to wait if there's no table available right now." Rylan tilted his head and looked her up and down slowly, deliberately, from her scuffed sneakers to her paint-flecked hair, the way someone inspects something they've already decided to throw away. "Ma'am, I'm going to be real with you. We have a strict dress code here at the Summit View. No athletic wear, no stained clothing, no open bags." He pointed at her reusable bag. "That's 3 violations right there. I didn't make the rules." But there were no rules. The restaurant had never posted a dress code. Rylan had invented it on the spot for a woman whose only crime was walking in while black and underdressed. Wanda glanced to her left. 2 tables over, a white man in his late 50s sat eating a bacon cheeseburger with his fingers. He wore a faded Atlanta Braves baseball cap, wrinkled gym shorts, and rubber sandals with no socks. His bare feet were propped on the empty chair across from him. Ketchup dotted his shirt. "That gentleman over there," Wanda said quietly, nodding in his direction, "is wearing gym shorts, a baseball cap, and sandals. There's ketchup on his shirt. Does the dress code not apply to him?" Rylan didn't even turn his head. "That's different. He's a regular. So the dress code is selective." It wasn't a question. It was a statement. And the way she said it, calm, precise, without anger, made Rylan's neck flush red. Something shifted in his face. The amusement drained away. His jaw tightened. He took a half step forward until Wanda could smell the coffee on his breath. When he spoke again, his voice was lower, harder, stripped of the fake politeness. "Look, I don't know where you came from. I don't know what you think this place is, but I'm telling you right now, you are making our guests uncomfortable. You are disrupting the dining experience, and I need you to leave immediately." Wanda's hands didn't move. Her breathing didn't change. Her voice stayed level. "I'm not leaving. I haven't done anything wrong. I'd like to speak with the general manager, please." "I am the manager on duty." "Then I'd like your full name and the name of the company that owns this restaurant." Rylan laughed, but this time the laugh had teeth. "You want to file a complaint? Go right ahead, sweetheart. Call whoever you want. Write a letter. Post it online. I promise you, nobody is going to believe someone who looks like you over someone like me." Every person within earshot heard it. The meaning was clear. It was never about a dress code. It was about skin. A woman at the bar set her glass down slowly. A couple near the window exchanged a long look. Lila stared at the tile floor, her face burning, lips pressed shut. Then Rylan did something no one expected. He turned to the nearest bus tray, grabbed a half-full glass of Coca-Cola, looked Wanda dead in the eyes, and in one smooth, deliberate motion tipped the glass forward and poured the soda directly onto her chest. The brown liquid hit her hoodie with a wet slap that echoed off the brick walls. Ice cubes bounced off her collarbone and clattered across the floor. Cola streamed down the front of her shirt, soaking through to her skin. A dark stain bloomed from her chest to her stomach. Droplets spattered her sneakers. A puddle formed around her feet. The restaurant went dead silent. Not a whisper, not a cough. The jazz music through the speakers suddenly sounded obscenely loud. Wanda stood perfectly still. Soda dripped from the hem of her hoodie in a slow, steady rhythm. A single ice cube rested on the toe of her left shoe. She could feel the cold liquid running down her ribs. She did not wipe her face. She did not step back. She did not cry. Rylan set the empty glass back on the bus tray with a light clink. He wiped his wet hand on his apron. Then he leaned in close, his mouth inches from her ear. "Oops, now you really don't meet the dress code." He straightened up, pointed toward the front door, and smiled. "Doors that way, sweetheart." Wanda still did not move. She stood in that puddle of soda with her chin level, shoulders back, eyes fixed on Rylan Holt's face. She was memorizing him, every crease, every ounce of cruelty behind that smirk. At a table near the kitchen pass-through, a woman named Ivy Langston sat with her phone raised in both trembling hands. She had started recording the moment Rylan first raised his voice. She had captured every word, every gesture, every frame of the soda arcing through the air and hitting Wanda's chest. Her screen showed several minutes and counting. She didn't stop. Behind the kitchen window, Chef Isabel Rivera stood frozen, knuckles white against the stainless steel counter. Her jaw was locked tight. She had seen Rylan do this before. Not the drink, but the humiliation, the profiling. She had reported him multiple times to corporate. Each time she was told he kept the dining room running smoothly. Leave it alone. She turned to the lion cook beside her and whispered through clenched teeth, "This isn't the first time, but I swear to God it's going to be the last." At the hostess stand, Lila gripped the wooden edge of her podium until her fingernails turned white. Her eyes were wet. She wanted to say something, to hand Wanda a napkin, but Rylan was her boss, and she was young and afraid. So she said nothing. Nobody said anything. The only sound was the slow, steady drip of soda hitting the hardwood floor. Rylan stared at Wanda. His smirk was cracking. He had expected her to cry, to curse, to shuffle out with her head down the way others had. But this woman just stood there, soaked in soda, calm as concrete, looking at him like she was reading the fine print of his soul. It unnerved him. And when Rylan Holt felt unnerved, he got louder. He snapped his fingers at a busboy, a skinny kid named Travis, barely out of his teens, standing near the service station pretending not to see. "Travis, mop now. Clean this mess up. And make sure she's gone before the evening crowd gets here." Travis didn't move. He stood holding a bin of dirty dishes, eyes darting between Rylan and Wanda. Rylan had already turned back to Wanda. He planted both hands on his hips and leaned forward until his shadow fell across her face. His voice dropped into something low and thick. "Honey, I don't know where you wandered in from. I don't know what bus dropped you off, but let me make something crystal clear so even you can understand it. This place is not for people like you. It never was. It never will be. So take your little bag of whatever that is, walk out that door, and go find a soup kitchen. I'm sure they'll have something more your speed." "People like you?" He said it again, louder this time. A declaration. Every person in the room heard exactly what those words meant. There was no ambiguity. Just a white man in a pressed black apron telling a black woman in a paint-stained hoodie that she did not deserve to exist in the same room as him. A man at the bar turned his body away. A young couple near the patio whispered urgently, faces tight with disgust and cowardice. They wanted to leave. They didn't want to be the ones who stood up. Wanda let out a slow breath through her nose. She wiped a streak of soda from her cheek with the back of her hand. Her fingers were steady. Her eyes were dry. Not because she didn't feel it, but because she had decided this man would not get a single tear from her. When she spoke, her voice was so quiet the nearest table leaned forward to hear. "I'd like your full name, and I'd like it now." Rylan barked a laugh, sharp and ugly. "My name? You want my name?" He grabbed the front of his apron and pulled it taut so she could read the embroidered tag. Rylan Holt, shift manager, employee of the month 3 times running. Go ahead, sweetheart. File your little complaint. I'll still be here tomorrow, and you'll still be out there. Wanda didn't respond. She took 2 steps to the side, reached into her pocket, and pulled out her phone, a simple phone in a plain black case. She dialed 1 number, speed dial, and pressed it to her ear. Rylan watched with arms folded. He assumed she was calling a friend or someone from whatever shelter he had invented for her. He shook his head and muttered loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Great, now she's calling for backup. What's next? The whole family shows up in matching tracksuits? 2 women at a corner table laughed nervously. A man at the bar shook his head but said nothing. On the other end, Garrett Richardson picked up before the first ring finished. Wanda's voice was calm, measured, the voice of a woman who had already decided exactly what would happen next. I'm at the Summit View Bistro on Peachtree. A manager threw a drink on me and refused me service. I'm fine, but I need you to look into who owns this place. She didn't explain further. Years of marriage had built a language between them that lived underneath words. Garrett heard the stillness in her voice. He understood what it meant. His voice didn't rise. It dropped into the voice that silenced boardrooms, the voice he used when someone breached a contract, when someone touched what was his. 3 words. Don't leave yet. The call ended. Wanda slid the phone into her pocket. Her face gave nothing away. Moments later, Garrett's executive assistant pulled the corporate registry. The restaurant was owned by Horizon Hospitality Group, a mid-size conglomerate managing dozens of properties across the Southeast. And Horizon Hospitality Group was currently negotiating a major contract with Apex Dynamics for their corporate hospitality division. The paperwork was drafted. The lawyers had reviewed it. All that was missing was Garrett's signature. That signature was never going to come. Back inside, Rylan knew none of this. He saw a woman in a ruined hoodie who had made a phone call that would change nothing. He saw weakness. He walked back toward her, slow and theatrical, wanting every eye on him. Are you still here? Seriously, do I need to call the police? Because I will. Wanda looked at him the way you look at the weather, something you cannot control and do not need to fight. You can call whoever you want. I'm not leaving. Anger flashed across Rylan's face. He yanked out his phone and dialed the non-emergency line. He turned away from Wanda, but spoke loud enough for the dining room to hear. Yes, hi. I need officers at the Summit View Bistro on Peachtree. I've got a trespasser refusing to leave. She's being aggressive and confrontational. She's making guests feel unsafe. He used the word aggressive about a woman who hadn't raised her voice once, who was still wearing the soda he had poured on her, who still hadn't clenched a fist. He hung up and turned back with fresh confidence, arms crossed, chin up, smirk locked in place. Cops are on their way, sweetheart. Last chance to walk out with whatever dignity you've got left. Wanda said nothing. Her hoodie clung to her chest, cold and damp. Her sneakers stuck to the floor. The bag of children's books hung heavy from her wrist. She looked like exactly what Rylan wanted. Small, powerless, defeated. But she wasn't any of those things. Shortly after, a patrol car pulled up outside. No lights, no siren. Two officers stepped through the front door. Rylan rushed toward them, voice pitched high with manufactured relief. "Officers, thank God. This woman has been causing a disturbance. She doesn't meet our dress code. She's refused to leave. She's trespassing." The officers looked past him. They saw Wanda near the hostess podium, a black woman in a soaked hoodie, arms at her sides, no weapon, no raised voice, just standing in a puddle of soda dripping onto hardwood. The older officer, Sergeant Mercer, decades on the force, frowned. He looked at Rylan, at Wanda, at the puddle, at the empty glass on the bus tray, still wet around the rim. Something didn't add up. "Ma'am," he said, stepping past Rylan. "Are you all right? Can you tell me what happened here?" Before Wanda could answer, a chair scraped hard against the floor. Every head turned. Ivy Langston was standing, phone raised in her trembling hands, screen bright, red recording, dot blinking. "Officer, I recorded everything from the very beginning. He threw a drink on this woman. He's been harassing her since she walked in. I have the whole thing on video, every single second." Sergeant Mercer looked at the phone, then at his partner. Something passed between them without words. Then he turned to Rylan. "Sir, I'm going to need to see that video, and I'm going to need you to step over here with me now." The smirk on Rylan Holt's face died. The left corner dropped first, then the right. Then the light behind his eyes went dark. For the first time since Wanda walked through that door, Rylan Holt had nothing to say. Sergeant Mercer and his partner watched the video in silence for several minutes. They saw Rylan block the door. They heard the goodwill joke. They watched him pour soda onto a woman who had done nothing but ask for a table. And they heard him say it twice, "People like you." When the video ended, Sergeant Mercer looked up at his partner. They both knew what they were looking at. At that exact moment, a sleek black Escalade pulled to the curb outside. The engine was still running when the rear door opened. Garrett Richardson stepped out. He wore a tailored charcoal suit, no tie, top button undone. Two members of his executive security detail flanked him, both in dark blazers with earpieces, scanning the sidewalk before he took his first step. He moved through the front door of the Summit View Bistro like he owned it. And in a sense, after what was about to happen, he might as well have. The energy inside the restaurant shifted the instant he crossed the threshold. It was like someone had changed the frequency of the room. A man at the bar sat up straighter. A woman near the window grabbed her husband's arm and whispered something urgent. Two businessmen at a corner table froze mid-conversation. One pulled out his phone and started typing, because they recognized him. Garrett Richardson had been on the cover of major business magazines multiple times. His face had appeared on major news networks. He was the founder and CEO of Apex Dynamics, a multi-billion-dollar defense and aerospace company that employed thousands across multiple states. And he was walking straight toward the woman in the soaked hoodie. He reached Wanda and stopped. He didn't speak right away. He looked at her, at the dark soda stain spreading across her chest, at the damp hem of her hoodie, at the sticky residue on her sneakers. His jaw tightened, his nostrils flared. A vein pulsed once along the side of his neck. He reached out and touched the wet fabric. Then he turned to face Rylan slowly, the way a man turns when he wants you to feel every degree of the rotation. Rylan stammered, "I suggest you take her and leave before this gets worse for both of you." Garrett pulled out his phone and dialed. The speaker was on. The entire restaurant could hear the ringing, and then the voice of Howard Klein, Horizon Hospitality Group's regional director, answering. "Mr. Richardson, good afternoon. Howard, I'm standing inside your restaurant, the Summit View Bistro. One of your managers just poured a glass of soda on my wife and called her homeless. He refused her service. He called the police on her. And he did it all because she's black and wasn't dressed the way he thought she should be. Silence on the other end, then a stammering breath. "Mr. Richardson, please. I'm sure we can discuss." "There's nothing to discuss. The contract is terminated, effective immediately. Your company's values are clear, and I want you to know my legal team will be in contact before the end of the day." He ended the call, slid the phone into his jacket pocket, and didn't look at it again. Ryland stood frozen. His mouth moved but produced no sound. His brain was trying to assemble a sentence, any sentence that could undo the last moments of his life. Finally, words came. Small, broken, pathetic. I didn't know. I just thought she was—" Wanda cut him off. She stepped forward one step. Just one. But it closed the distance between them in a way that made Ryland take a half step back. Her voice was quiet, but every person in that silent restaurant heard it. "You thought what? That a black woman in a hoodie doesn't deserve to eat here? That she couldn't possibly belong in a place like this?" She held his gaze. "That's exactly the problem." Ryland opened his mouth again. Nothing came out. His eyes were wet. His hands were shaking. The apron he had been so proud of hung crooked on his chest, the Employee of the Month tag catching the overhead light like a joke nobody was laughing at anymore. The silence that followed Wanda's words lasted only seconds, but to Ryland Holt, standing in the middle of his own restaurant with soda still drying on the floor and dozens of eyes locked on his face, it felt like years. Then the silence broke, and everything broke with it. Ryland's legs buckled first. Not physically, but something inside him collapsed. The posture that had carried him all afternoon, the puffed chest, the lifted chin, the crossed arms, all of it crumbled. "It was a misunderstanding," he said, voice cracking. "I didn't mean it like that, I swear. I was doing my job. I was trying to maintain standards. That's all. I'm sorry. Okay? I'm sorry." Nobody in the room believed him. Not the couple near the window who had laughed at his goodwill joke earlier and were now staring at their plates in shame. Not Lila, who stood behind the hostess podium with tears running silently down her cheeks. Not Travis, the busboy, who had finally set down his bin of dishes and was watching with arms crossed and jaw clenched tight. Sergeant Mercer stepped forward. He had finished reviewing Ivy's video. He had watched it multiple times, and he had seen enough. "Sir," he said, voice carrying the flat, practiced calm of a man who had delivered bad news countless times. "Under Georgia law, what you did, throwing that drink, constitutes simple battery. That's unwanted physical contact. It's on video. Multiple witnesses confirm it." Ryland's face went white. Not pale, but the color of printer paper. "Battery? No, it was just a drink. It was just soda. I didn't hit her. I never touched her." "You don't have to hit someone for it to be battery, sir. Making offensive physical contact, including throwing a substance on another person, meets the legal threshold. I need you to turn around and place your hands behind your back." "You can't be serious. You can't. This is my restaurant. I'm the manager here. You can't arrest me in my own restaurant." "Sir, turn around. Hands behind your back. Now." The click of the handcuffs was the loudest sound in the room, metal against metal. It echoed off the exposed brick walls and the Edison bulb fixtures and the chalkboard cocktail menu. Every diner heard it. Every server. Every bartender. The man in the gym shorts and baseball cap heard it. The two women with designer sunglasses heard it. Ryland Holt was walked out of the Summit View Bistro in handcuffs, past the tables he had managed, past the guests he had claimed to protect, past the hostess stand where he had blocked a woman from eating lunch. His head was down. His apron was still on. The Employee of the Month tag swung back and forth with each step. The front door closed behind him. Through the glass, the diners watched him being placed into the back of the patrol car. The overhead lights of the cruiser reflected off the restaurant windows, blue and red, washing across white tablecloths and half-finished plates of steak. Inside, Garrett was already on the phone with his legal team. His voice was low and precise. Instructions, not conversations. Within the hour, Apex Dynamics issued a formal statement. All business relationships with Horizon Hospitality Group were terminated immediately, citing a corporate culture that enables racial discrimination. Howard Klein called back multiple times. Garrett declined each one. Each voicemail grew more desperate, offering to fire Rylan, offering a formal apology, offering to fly to Atlanta personally. Garrett didn't respond. Before Wanda left the restaurant, one person approached her. Chef Isabel Rivera came out from the kitchen. She had taken off her apron. Her eyes were red. Her hands were clasped together in front of her chest like she was holding something fragile. "I reported him," she said, voice breaking. "Multiple times. I filed complaints with the corporation. They told me to leave it alone. They said he kept the dining room running smoothly." She swallowed hard. "Nobody listened to me. Nobody did anything." She looked at Wanda. Tears spilled down both cheeks. "Thank you." Wanda reached out and took Isabel's hands in hers. She held them. She didn't say it's okay, because it wasn't okay. She didn't say it's over, because it wasn't over. She just held this woman's hands in a restaurant that smelled like rosemary and spilled soda. And she nodded. That evening, Ivy Langston sat in her living room and uploaded the video. She titled it, "Manager Throws Soda on Black Woman at Upscale Atlanta Restaurant." She posted it on multiple platforms and tagged every local news station she could find. Within hours, it had hundreds of thousands of views. By the next morning, it had crossed 1 million. By the following day, it was at millions and climbing. The hashtag appeared just after nightfall. 4 words, no spaces. Justice for Wanda. By the next morning, Wanda Richardson's name was everywhere. Not because she sought it, but because millions of people had watched a man pour soda on her chest and tell her she didn't belong. Major news networks ran the video in split-screen segments. Legal analysts broke down the case in real time. Local Atlanta affiliates parked satellite trucks outside the Summit View Bistro. The restaurant was closed. A handwritten sign taped to the glass read, "Closed until further notice." Days later, Wanda retained Marcus Hale, a civil rights attorney with decades of experience and a reputation that preceded him into every courtroom. He had never lost a case he believed in. He believed in this one. Within days, Hale filed 2 actions, a criminal complaint reinforcing the battery charge and a civil rights lawsuit against Rylan Holt personally and Horizon Hospitality Group corporately, alleging racial discrimination, assault, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and violation of Georgia's public accommodation statutes. The discovery phase uncovered something worse than anyone expected. Isabel Rivera gave a sworn deposition lasting hours. She described Rylan turning away a black couple on their anniversary because the husband wore sneakers while a white man in flip-flops sat nearby. She described him telling a Latino family the restaurant was fully booked, then seating a white party of 4 at an empty table minutes later. She described him calling black diners "those people" in staff meetings. And she described the multiple formal complaints she had filed with Horizon's Human Resources, each documented, dated, signed, and ignored. 2 former servers came forward next. One described being told by Rylan to keep an eye on tables with black guests because they don't tip and they'll skip out on the check. The other described Rylan instructing the hostess to seat black diners near the kitchen or restrooms, never by the window, because it doesn't look right for the brand. Every statement was sworn. Every statement pointed to the same conclusion. What happened to Wanda was not isolated. It was a pattern, a system, a culture allowed to grow because the people in charge chose to look away. Then came the emails. Hale's team subpoenaed Horizon's internal communications. Buried in a chain between Howard Klein and a regional vice president was an email from months before the incident. Isabel's complaint was attached. Beneath it, the vice president had written sentences that would become the most damaging evidence in the entire case. He keeps our clientele looking right. The numbers at Summit View are up significantly since he started. I don't want to lose that over a sensitivity issue. Leave it alone. Those 3 words, leave it alone, were projected onto a courtroom screen weeks later in front of a judge, a jury, and journalists. The criminal trial lasted several days. The prosecution played Ivy's full video on the first morning. The jury watched Rylan block the door. They heard the jokes. They watched the soda arc through the air. They heard, "People like you," twice. Several jurors looked away during the pour. Rylan's defense attorney argued the drink was accidental, that Rylan reached for the glass and it slipped, that his comments were misinterpreted, that the situation was an unfortunate workplace misunderstanding. The video destroyed that argument. You could see his eyes lock onto Wanda before he tipped the glass, the deliberate angle of his wrist, the smirk that followed. Nothing about it was accidental. The jury deliberated quickly. Guilty. Simple battery. Probation. Extensive community service. And fines. His name entered into the criminal record system. The civil lawsuit hit Horizon like a freight train. Faced with the video, Isabel's testimony, employee depositions, and the internal email now public record, Horizon's legal team recommended immediate settlement, millions of dollars. The settlement required Horizon to implement mandatory anti-discrimination training across all properties, to hire an independent civil rights compliance officer reporting directly to the board, to establish a formal complaint system with guaranteed response timelines, and to issue a public video apology from the CEO. Howard Klein was demoted to a non-client-facing role. The vice president who wrote, "Leave it alone," was terminated. Other managers who had received discrimination complaints without action were placed on leave pending review. Rylan Holt was permanently barred from employment at any Horizon property. But Wanda wasn't finished. The settlement money arrived in a wire transfer. By the next morning, every cent had been redirected. Not to Wanda's account, not to a financial advisor, but to Hope Bridge Community Center. The settlement funded a new building expansion, doubling the center's capacity, a scholarship fund for first-generation college students, a job training program in hospitality and culinary arts, and a children's library painted sky blue on the walls and sunshine yellow on the trim, stocked with thousands of books. Garrett matched it. Apex Dynamics announced a major fund for civil rights legal defense across the Southeast, covering attorney fees, filing costs, and expert witnesses for people who couldn't afford to fight back alone. 1 week later, Wanda agreed to a single interview, 1 camera, 1 morning show. She wore a navy blazer and small gold earrings. The host asked what she wanted people to take from her story. Wanda looked into this camera without hesitation. "I wasn't angry for myself. I have resources most people don't. But I stood in that restaurant and thought about how every person turned away because of how they looked. Every person told they didn't belong. Every person who didn't have someone to make a phone call. Those are the people I was fighting for." The clip was viewed millions of times within days. Isabel Rivera was promoted. Horizon's new compliance officer reviewed her file, noted the ignored complaints, and recommended her for assistant general manager at a renovated property. On her first day, she hung a small framed sign behind her desk. "Every voice matters, especially the ones that get ignored." Months later, on a Saturday morning in early spring, Wanda Richardson woke up early. She walked past the marble countertops and the floor-to-ceiling windows where golden light was just beginning to spill across the garden. She reached into the back of her closet and pulled out the same faded Spelman College hoodie. It had been washed dozens of times since that day. But if you looked closely, right below the collar just left of center, you could still see the faint outline of a stain, a shadow of brown against gray cotton. She had patched it herself with a small square of purple fabric stitched by hand. She never replaced that hoodie. She wore it every Saturday, not because she had to, but because she chose to. Because it reminded her that dignity doesn't come from what you wear. It comes from who you are when someone tries to take it from you. Garrett was at the kitchen island in the same spot, same stack of contracts. He looked up. "Lunch today?" "I'll try," she said. Same answer, same smile, same kiss on the forehead. She drove the Civic across town to Hope Bridge Community Center. But this time, when she pulled into the parking lot, something was different. The building was twice the size it had been months earlier. A new wing stretched out from the east side. Bright windows, fresh brick, a mural painted across the entrance wall by local high school students. The mural showed hands of every color reaching upward toward a golden sun. Inside, the new children's library was full. Kids sat cross-legged on a blue carpet, books open in their laps. The shelves were stocked with thousands of titles donated from across the country after the story went national. The walls were sky blue. The trim was sunshine yellow, just like the reading nook Wanda had been painting the day everything changed. A little girl, the same one who had drawn the crayon picture months earlier, ran up to Wanda the moment she walked through the door. She wrapped her arms around Wanda's waist and squeezed. "Miss Wanda, did you see? They put my drawing on the wall." Wanda looked up. There it was, framed and mounted near the library entrance. A stick figure in a purple hoodie with big curly hair. Underneath in wobbly crayon letters, "Miss Wanda, my hero." Wanda knelt down and held that little girl's face in both hands. "I see it, baby, I see it." Across town, Rylan Holt had completed his probation and community service. He was no longer employed in hospitality. No restaurant in Atlanta would hire him. His name returned hundreds of thousands of search results, everyone connected to the video, the trial, and the hashtag that had trended for days. He had deleted all his social media accounts. He had moved to a smaller apartment. The life he had known was gone. Ivy Langston, the woman who held her phone steady while her hands shook, had become an advocate for bystander intervention. She spoke at schools, churches, and community centers about the power of recording, the responsibility of witnessing, and the difference one person can make by refusing to look away. The Apex Dynamic Civil Rights Defense Fund had supported dozens of discrimination cases in its first year. Many resulted in settlements or wins at trial. And every Saturday, without fail, Wanda Richardson showed up at Hope Bridge in her patched hoodie and scuffed sneakers. She sorted coats. She read to children. She painted walls. She never arrived in the Mercedes. She never wore the blazer. Because the woman who could buy the whole block didn't need anyone to know it. She just needed to be there. Now let me ask you something. And I mean this. Really think about it before you answer. If you were sitting in that restaurant and you watched Rylan Holt pour that glass of soda on a woman who had done nothing wrong, what would you have done? Would you have looked down at your plate and pretended you didn't see it? Would you have whispered to the person next to you and hoped someone else would step in? Or would you have done what Ivy did? Pulled out your phone, hit record, and stood up? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story moved you, if it made you feel something, then do me a favor. Hit that like button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Because I've got more stories like this coming. And trust me, they only get more intense from here. But before you go, I want you to remember one thing from this whole story. Carry it with you. Justice doesn't always start in a courtroom. Sometimes it starts with one person who refuses to leave. One person who stands in a puddle of soda with her chin up and her shoulders back and says, I'm not going anywhere. Be that person. A glass of soda. That's all it took. One glass, and Rylan lost his career, his reputation, and cost his company a major contract worth hundreds of millions. But here's what I can't let go of. Wanda could have walked out, dripping down her chest, a man in her face telling her she didn't belong. Nobody would have blamed her. But she planted her feet in that puddle, looked him dead in the eye, and said, "I'm not going anywhere." And Rylan wasn't sorry he did it. He was sorry he got caught. That apology didn't come when he poured the drink. It came when he found out her husband was worth billions. That tells you everything you need to know. But here's what keeps me up at night. How many people get that same treatment and there's no making the phone call, no video, no hashtag? Just someone walking out soaked and humiliated with nobody saying a word? So be honest with me. If you were sitting in that restaurant, what would you have done? Looked down at your plate or stood up? Tell me in the comments. If there's more, like, share, and subscribe. Hit that bell. We tell these stories every week. Dignity doesn't have a dress code. Remember that.